Testing, testing. Hello. If someone can chat, tell me if they can hear me, please. Testing. Testing. All right. Cool. We're good. All right. So, I gotta get my books, but that's fine. All right. So, oh yeah, let me put the links in chat. Okay. So I don't know if it's always necessary to share the slideshow since you'll be looking at it on the screen anyways, but might as well. So there's two slideshows today because I'm continuing the lecture from last week and starting a new slideshow / new subject that should be shorter because there's a lot of videos to watch and I don't want to watch them during the lecture. Now I can hear myself. Don't want to hear myself. All right, so, but actually before I start, starting a little late because I had to go to the washroom right before the lecture started. So I want to start off with, I'm going to link this. I created a story-based card game called Soft. Here's a link to it. It's so weird seeing myself like that. Yeah, I'm going to keep that open just in case. And so what this is, and this is the download. That's basically you need 52 pack of cards. You can play it or you can just read it. So here's an intro, and then you navigate a field of cards. If you whatever card you end up at, you read this. So there's 52 little entries here. Random stuff. Trying to convince you that bugs aren't so bad or weird. This one is just things for you to do in real life. And then this one is stories with my OCs or original characters. And these are the characters. I encourage you to give that a play. I released it yesterday. There's me with Amicus. Oh, speaking of, Amicus isn't joining us today, partially because he's sleeping in, partially because I'm talking about how bad some humans can get today, and I don't want him to hear that. Okay. So there's that. I also want to show you this really funny video that's about a minute long, featuring Legoshi from Beastars. Oh, I just realized I need to change the view mode because you can't see the screen. Alright, so now I'm gonna SHAT. Force quit that. Legoshi. I also need to put the cover on my cup of tea. Okay. All right. I don't know. I've watched that way too many times to not share. All right. So now on to the actual lesson. Oh. Yeah. So last week we were talking about what do you want from art, and there's many reasons that people don't like art. Blah blah blah. Minimalism, abstraction. But what it comes down to for most people is, again, people don't really care about art a whole lot. That's not true. I would say people don't get like super passionate until money becomes like a topic, basically. Again, my analogy last week was if you're if you just have any piece of art, abstract art in a hotel or on a fridge, people don't care. It looks nice. But once it fetches for $100,000, that's when people get mad. So this is a video that we're not going to watch about talking about the art market. So with my master's degree, I was specifically trained to work within this art market, where essentially you have to network, you have to get represented by a gallery in order to show your work at a gallery by having connections and stuff like that. And it's not for me. I'm I'm too nice for that. Meaning I don't know, I just don't know how to network very well and like maintain integrity. You have to go to a bunch of gallery shows and meet people. And when I go to a gallery, I want to look at art. I don't want to talk to people and try to schmooze, So yeah, like it's a world that's not for me, which is why I make like that card game I just made, or comics or whatever, furry art. And so this video talks about that kind of world, where artwork does cost a lot of money and rich people buy it. So the summary of this video is art market benefits wealthy collectors and excludes artists. So there's a lot of money being exchanged between people. Artists get some money, but at some point the artist gets excluded, where collectors, what is it called? Not swap, flip. They'll flip the art for higher prices. And most of the time, from what I can tell, is that it's more about the bragging rights of what art you have more than the actual art itself that matters. And it's driven by arbitrary metrics, by, is the artist hot right now? Are they up and coming? Have they been well established? Are they falling down? I don't remember the site, but there's a website that has statistics of hot artists right now, if they're going up and going down. It's just so depressing. So it's not based on merit. It's not based on how. Yeah, it's basically based on everything but merit. Um, and auctions that come into this, those are fixed as well. They're very, very shady, and again, uh, the artist doesn't benefit from them as far as I can tell. A lot of the art auctions, I think it's collector exchanging money to collector. Maybe the artist gets some of it, but even if so, it's definitely not as like the whole part about art being meaningful kind of breaks down once you make this artwork a commodity or something mainly to be sold or invested in rather than interest in the object itself. And also art donations to like galleries and museums are tax write-offs for the rich. So yeah, art market kind of sucks, and that's one reason why I don't do it. Um, so yeah, that going back to then this again, like this is an artwork that if it were to be sold for $1 million, it would make people really mad. But again, seeing these in like hotels, just displayed on the wall, they look nice. They're inoffensive. They're just kind of decorations. That's when the money or fame changes, right? Because you don't know who this artist was. You don't know how much the hotel paid for this. It could be a giclée print. Giclée meaning basically a print on canvas. So context matters heavily on this. And yeah, again, money is a huge thing. So this is a couple years old by now. I think 1 or 2 years old. The banana duct tape to the wall that sold for 150,000. There is so what's being done here is it's this video is really good to watch by yourself, on your own. But essentially, the gist of it is it is just any banana. It is just any duct tape, but the reason it costs $150,000 is because it's the artist's signature saying, if you're an art gallery, you can display a banana like this, and it's authentic. And I don't know the legal ramifications if they do this without the certification. If nobody knows, then nobody knows, I guess. But with social media, that's kind of impossible now. But yeah, so there's essentially 3 certificates sold: the artist proof and 2 other copies, or maybe it was 3. 2 of them were 120,000. This one was 150,000, and this is a big piece. It's probably one of the most important pieces in the past few years because of the conversation that it started, the dialogue that came out of it, and people's perception of art and making fun of it and memeing it, which is super powerful. And so, little context is the artist Mario Katzalan, I believe. I forgot how to pronounce his name. He's kind of a jokester, and this piece is called Comedian, and I kind of think the whole thing behind this is essentially like kind of playing around with the art market and rich collectors and what is art, what is valued as art, and it turned into a meme, right? And so I feel like this artist who I'm okay, so it's minimal work technically. Like, it didn't take any effort to do this, but it did take a lot of guts, if you think about, to do it, because it was in this prestigious show, the Miami Art Fair, and to just do this for an art show where other things sell for like just as much, that are like that take a lot more time, fabrication, etc. That's actually kind of a courageous move in a sense. I don't think courageous is the right word, but yeah, it's he's kind of putting his neck out there. And then look what turned out from this little thing that he did, right? It gained notoriety, gained popularity, it gained discourse in popular culture. It made people infuriated. And if you're an artist, having people react to your work so strongly is probably the greatest thing that can happen. Because there's nothing worse than making a piece of art and people just not caring. It just sits there. That's absolutely the worst feeling. So for people to be outraged, it's not the best, but also it gets people thinking and talking about art, which is ultimately what's super important now. Because art's not just something to make to look pretty. Nowadays, like, it's important to make challenging art that challenges assumptions, challenges the status quo. And so there's been many other things that have been like this, or even more minimal, but this really set off conversation and is the most important, artwork for in the past couple of years for sure. So it's interesting to think about because no one would have really cared if it didn't get the publicity or if it wasn't didn't fetch for that much money. If it was like $100, people might like laugh like this is crazy, or whatever. But since it fetched for so much money, that's when people start caring and start getting upset. Because they get jealous that, well, I could have done that. And then going back to our conversation last week, no, you couldn't have, because you don't have the connections, you don't have the representation in the gallery. You could technically make the art, but you weren't in the position that this artist was to make it what it was. So when people say I could do that, it's just an extremely lazy way of saying, I don't like this art, I don't value it very much, and I don't understand why it costs that much money. Because, like I said, there's a bunch of reasons why it made that much money. Because he's a famous artist who's made really intense, really cool stuff, and also really stupid things as well. So again, context is what matters the most when it comes to art, when it comes to money. Like, again, you could have done that, but you weren't in that position to make something that caused that much uproar. Okay. And yeah, it's one of those things where if there's like a YouTube video on it, people just sound off in the comments, and guess what? You can just ignore the comments. I think it's actually kind of healthy for people to sort of just let off steam like that in the comments, but it becomes unhealthy when anyone else reads your comment if it's super angry. So yeah, I think it's good to just like say something, but again, it's even better to go further and ask yourself, why do I feel this way, and talk about maybe why this artist doesn't deserve this money, or this artist was a genius. I personally think this artist was really smart, because again, it's super important. Okay, so last week I talked a lot about abstract art and really enjoying that, but I can also like representational like art as well. So when I was at the Louvre in 2008, I don't mind saying that to like friends and family, but I always feel like a jerk for saying like I was at the Louvre. I traveled Europe for a few weeks. I don't like those type of people who just like brag about that kind of stuff. So in the Louvre, I don't have. Yeah, this is like kind of the scale that painting was at. I couldn't find a good image of that, but this painting was gigantic. I was largely unimpressed by a lot of the paintings in the Louvre because like a lot of them were like this old classical, neoclassical, whatever style, that are huge, and you kind of see them everywhere, like in art history books. You see them printed as examples of great art, and it just gets kind of repetitive and monotonous. But this one specifically blew me away. First of all, because it was enormous, and for me, the biggest part was like I'm not Italian. I'm an eighth Italian or a quarter Italian or something like that. But there's this word right here, chiaroscuro. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but basically means a contrast between darks and lights. And this looks okay on the screen, but when it's 6.5 by 8.5 feet large, it's extremely mind blowing. So the textures of it, the way it looks, the way it just feels, the light bouncing off, it was just the most incredibly affecting painting that I saw at the Louvre. The Mona Lisa wasn't shit, basically, but I wouldn't have cared, but my mom made me take a picture of it to show to her. The Mona Lisa, this painting, amazing. If you ever go to the Louvre, I hope you get to see this. It was incredible. So like this page says, you could like different things. I don't just like abstract artworks. I like things because I like them, and my favorite things are things that I'm looking at the time. So today I was listening to some instrumental rock music, which is a really weird way of saying it if you're not a music nerd. Basically math rock for those who are nerdy like me. And I was in the mood for that, and I wasn't really in the mood for black metal, for example. That's usually a good genre for winter for me. So just like that, sometimes I really like beautifully executed representations of the real world. So I will say that back then I hadn't studied art, and I was being kind of a little jerk because I didn't appreciate the art back then. Would I feel differently now? Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but seeing a lot of this is overwhelming, and it gets kind of boring, to be quite honest with you. All right, so here's another abstract artwork, but yeah. Oh yeah, another point is I grew up Catholic, and I saw a lot of that kind of style. Another thing is right here, I usually look for things that are strange and unfamiliar. That's really important to me. I look for that in music as well. I do not listen to the radio. I don't listen to Spotify for different reasons, for ethical reasons, but yeah, I think it's important for me personally to find things that are new and weird and things I don't know what to think about. And honestly, it's fine if people aren't like that. There's nothing wrong with liking things just because it makes you feel good. I kind of wish more people sought out artwork or stuff that challenges assumptions more. But you know what? If that's what people don't want to do, that's fine. I'm not going to force anyone to do anything. And a lot of this, these last 2 points, is going back to the fact that I'm kind of shallow when it comes to my reading in art. I don't really like to look for meaning in art. I just like to look at it and see how it makes me feel on the surface. And a lot of these paintings have stories behind them that reference mythology or religious stories, or just historical events and stuff like that. And I'm not really good at reading into symbolism and stuff, so it's just not really my thing, honestly. I'd rather look at this, which is an AI generated image, because it's so weird, it's so uncanny, and I'd rather think about what this could be, what it could represent. It could represent like a surrealistic world to me, and I could imagine like what else is in that world. But with paintings where the subject matter is more defined, to me it's just like, okay, that's all it is, and I don't want to read into it, so let's move on. So here's a good way to sort of open my mind, and this I'm saying all this because it could apply to you as well. So a good way to sort of appreciate an artwork more that you don't like is put it on your wall, like print it out on a piece of paper, put it on your wall so you're forced to look at it every day. Then you'll start seeing more details than you normally would if you just passed by in the gallery, museum, or whatever. And since it's not competing with like hundreds or tens of paintings, like you're focused on that one, so you're just gonna stick with that one and look at it, and you're gonna look at the details more granular, meaning at a finer scale, like grains. Also look up more information about it. With that painting, I didn't really care about looking up more information. I just wanted to enjoy it as it was. I could look up more information to make these things more exciting or better. Sometimes learning the background behind it like makes something worth looking at where it normally might not. Sometimes it could be super like cool, like, whoa, I didn't know this crazy fact about puppies, or it could be like very sad. It could inform you about mythology and get you into mythology or whatever. Yeah. So appreciating artwork is not the same as liking it. So again, you don't have to like an artwork in order to appreciate it. So appreciating basically meaning like you're understanding or sort of trying to read into an artwork, seeing what's going on, trying to see the brush strokes, the composition, the line work, etc. And you don't have to like it, and that's fine. But sometimes it could lead to liking it. All right. All right. So that was for my class. And now for art versus artist. Oh, jeez. Okay. Ended exactly at 11:30. Hay que la fregada. It's taking a minute to load. There we go. All right. So art versus artist is something we all deal with at some point because here's this really bad pun. Artists do not exist in a vacuum, but sometimes they suck. Oh, Daniel. Vacuum meaning like there's context behind art. You can't just ignore the artist, or you can't ignore the culture that they're in. So there's this incredible video that summarizes this whole thing. Instead, I'm just going to go to the questions and reflections from this video. I'm not even going to read off of this. I'm just going to kind of talk. Pardon me. So what's important to understand about separating the art from the artist is people will ask, can you separate the art from the artist? And the answer is yes, of course you can. But the thing is, do you want to? And if there's anything I want to impart upon you when it comes to this is case by case basis, right? So if we were to ignore all of the movies that have really problematic people in them, we wouldn't watch any movies at all because they're large productions with tons of people, right? And there's probably some jerks working in those, right? And if we write all movies off just because there's jerks in them, then we won't watch any movies, and we're missing out on a lot of culture. So I think it's important to really consider who the artist is, what they've done, if they've done anything bad. Maybe you just don't know anything about the artist, and that's fine. And sometimes it's better not knowing anything about the artist rather than knowing a lot about the artist, depending on the artwork. So it all comes down to context again. So so the so the easiest example is because Nanette talks about it, Hannah Gadsby special on Netflix, which I recommend. Picasso was a complete jerk. He met his wife when he was 45 and she was 17. I forgot her name, Marie Therese Walter. I know I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Like, he was a misogynist jerk. Like, he treated women like crap, basically. But we recognize him as one of the most influential artists of our entire time. So what do we do with this information, basically? I don't know. It depends on how you want to break it down, because some of his artworks, he depicts women being these savages, and sometimes he has artwork about himself being sad, or his one of his most famous paintings, Guernica, talks about the Spanish Civil War, if I remember correctly, and it's the horrors of it, which was a very affecting painting. So again, like, sometimes you gotta separate some artwork from the artist, like again the Guernica painting, because it was super important, and sort of communicating how terrible the war was, and it really affected people, and it still affects people today, in fact. But at the same time, yeah, treating women like he did was pretty awful. But one of his most famous paintings, which I don't think I have displayed here, Mademoiselle d'Avignon. God, it's bad, like, knowing a lot of art but not knowing how to pronounce it, because I'm American and can't speak French. But yeah, one of his most famous paintings, like, depicts women as, like, savages, and they're nude and they're kind of objectified and not treated as humans, and it's really unsettling. So what do we do with this? Personally, I've learned to, like, when it comes to Picasso specifically, I I always acknowledge that he's a super important, influential artist, and when people talk trash about, oh, he doesn't know how to paint, I say he actually really, like, was a prodigy when he was a young boy. He used to be able to, or he was always able to paint, like, very, very well. I forgot the exact painting that people always show, but it's gorgeous. And so I can back him up on that, because that, in that sense, that's people attacking art in general. Like saying cubism sucks or abstract art sucks. But it's like, well, no, a lot of these abstract artists can paint really well most of the time. So again, it's wholly dependent on the situation, the context, what painting you're looking at, what angle you're approaching this from, But but as soon as someone brings up himself as a person, yeah, I'll trash him, no problem. I don't respect people who don't respect women. So I have complicated feelings about Picasso, because I do really like cubism quite a bit. I think, again, I like things that are different, that can't exist in real life. So to me, it's really neat. But could we have done without Picasso? We can't ignore the contributions that he's put into the world. But like the Rolling Stones said back in the day, we're just a rock band. If we didn't exist, someone else would. How true is that? I don't know, but yeah, it's not good to ignore that kind of stuff. It's good to talk about it and bring it up and realize that, yeah, artists can be horrible people even if they were super influential and important, right? And then I want to go to this point. What happens when the artist apologizes or admits they made a mistake or they're being a jerk? Again, that's super complicated. A lot of PR for companies, when they do something bad, they'll say, like, oh, we're sorry you were offended, or we didn't mean for it to be like this. And it's just empty, hollow apologies. That's when I'm just like, screw you, that's nothing. But when artist does actual work to help the victims or help prevent stuff like that from happening again, then that, I feel like those are good apologies, and you can probably look at their work again, at least for me. So again, this depends on what your idea of how far you want to take your forgiveness. Do you even care that they made a mistake? Can you just ignore it if you like it too much? I used to be a huge fan of Aerosmith, and I'm sure they've done a lot of really, really bad stuff. I haven't read much about them, but like, I can't admit that I don't like a lot of their music. It's weird to be saying this to like 20-year-olds, because they're like 50, 60 years old as a band or something like that. I think maybe 100. I don't know. Yeah, it's really weird because I don't know everything about Aerosmith. And I'm not going to research them because I don't want to be disappointed. And that says a lot, right? I don't want to research artists too much because I don't want to find out if they're jerks and ruin my art. So that's another point I want to bring up is, like, is ignorance okay? Is it okay just not knowing about these things and just kind of brushing them off? Again, it depends on context and how you feel about it. So, a recent struggle I had was this black metal band called Deathspell Omega. The most avant-garde, incredible stuff I've heard. And the singers, they're fine as people. Their politics, they're pretty progressive. However, they hire a singer who is a known white nationalist, which obviously is awful, and they hire him to sing stuff that opposes his views, and they make him sing it. So how does that fit into it, right? So I struggled for about a week or two. Like, can I listen to this band who talks about things that I don't disagree with, but they have a singer who has this ideology that's absolutely repulsive, even though he's singing about stuff that I wouldn't disagree with. The thing is, and what I went to is, you know what? I would be supporting him financially, the white supremacist. And so for me, it was very painful, but yeah, I guess I'm not going to listen to this. One of the best bands I've ever heard in my entire life, and yeah, it was a complicated, even though like I've taught this class a couple times, I think about this topic a lot, art versus artist. Yeah, that was still complicated for me because I was trying to justify my way around it, so that goes back to, are you purposely being ignorant of it? Like, when it comes to black metal, it sucks because most of the, like, you can't ignore politics in black metal because it's either like super racist stuff or it's not. But there's also RABM, Red and Anarchist black metal, which is more in tune to what I'm into, which is more about peace and love and acceptance, and black metal, go figure. But yeah, it's a thing. So yeah, it's like black metal is one of those sticky situations where I can't remain ignorant of the band that I'm looking at. I can't avoid it because I know there's a lot of bands that would want me as a gay person of color dead. Like they would literally kill me, or they wish I didn't exist. And I'm not cool with that. And so I need to know that about someone's artwork before supporting them. And same thing with Chick-fil-A, for example. Like, I've never had Chick-fil-A in my life, and I never will, because I know they are anti-LGBTQ, and I don't want to give money to an organization that wants me dead, basically. Again, because I'm not really into that, and that's a hateful position. So for me, that's not a sticky situation at all. But I've seen people saying like, "Yeah, I know they're like that, but I can't ignore their chicken burgers. They're just too delicious," And I'm like, "That's your decision. I'm not going to force you to do anything, but maybe think about that a little bit more. And I'm not going to try to change your mind, but think about where you're putting your money and how you're voting for that. If they're like, it's kind of painful to see people who are LGBTQ like eat Chick-fil-A, for example. And same thing with Carl's Jr. and Taco Bell, which is probably a good thing. But yeah, they're super right wing against rights for queer people and minorities, I think. Definitely trans people. And I don't eat at those places anymore because I don't want to give them their money. And it sucks. But again, it's probably better for my body in the long run, So by spending your money there, you're contributing to that message, to that company and their well-being, when you could do something alternative. But then again, like, this shirt was probably made in a sweatshop, So at some point, you have to draw a line. I personally don't go to Walmart. I can't stand it. I used to call it the devil store. My mom calls it the devil store because of my stance against it. But at the same time, I go to I avoid Target, but I still go to Target. Like, that doesn't make sense really. But you have to draw a line somewhere. I have to get things from someplace, and sometimes Target is more sustainable than a local store. Like, I just can't afford it. But usually if I can't afford it at a local store, I just don't get it. So, yeah, I have not been to Walmart once and purchased anything. Well, I've been to Walmart, but I've never purchased anything there. Because they're super imperialists and taking over cities and stuff like that. I don't like them. Another point that this video brings up is, like, what about awful scientists or people who made contributions to society? Like, I forgot the example here, but like scientists who have changed humanity for the better. What if they're awful anti-Semites? Like, we can't just ignore their contributions. What do we do with this? Again, I think it depends on the person and what they do personally, but it's good to be mindful about it, is the bottom line of this whole conversation. Is know what these people are doing. If it's something, like, you can't think about everything all the time. That's impossible, right? But if you have time to research something that you're not sure about, research it, Like, my big thing is I'm researching pets and what pets would actually really, like, need a small space, like tarantulas, for example. And I don't want to own a bird as much as I love them, because I have a very small apartment, and I don't feel I could provide a good life for it, right? And so I'm trying to figure out, like, I know I could provide it a decent, comfortable life for it, but is it the optimal life? Same thing with like other things. I just got totally mixed up. What was I saying? The reason I'm saying that is because, like, that's something I'm concentrating on right now. I'm putting a lot of energy into it, but I'm not thinking about the food product that I'm eating. Like, what company is doing bad things, for example. I remember Nutella was under attack by a student we had a project where we had to talk about the ugly truth behind some products. Someone talked about Nutella, which I dearly love, how they use palm oil, which is a huge issue for deforestation, and it's extremely harmful for the environment. So that broke my heart, and I switched to Costco Nutella. But then I did more research on it, and a couple years ago, Nutella switched up their methods for getting palm oil. It might be a different oil, or it might be more sustainable now. But yeah, that's something I was invested in because it was brought up to my attention, right? Whereas you're not gonna research everything. I'm talking in circles. Okay. So this is a really good article. It's like I say, it's extremely optional because it talks about Woody Allen and sexual assault, and a movie about basically him, a middle-aged man, being with a 17-year-old girl, and the power dynamics. And it's, again, I do not recommend it if these sort of things trigger you. I mean, trigger in a positive, in the sense that's not like, you know what I mean, for those people who know what I mean. Yeah, if it triggers some anxiety or discomfort, do not read it. But this mini interview, 5-minute audio interview, is a good summary of it that is less explicit if you don't want to read this. But if you can handle some talk and stuff like that about that kind of stuff, it's a really, really amazing article. So this again goes back to the whole conversation of, like, okay, so Woody Allen, for those who don't know, is a very well loved and well respected filmmaker who makes incredible movies. However, he's done some extremely questionable things, and he sort of just blows it off like, why'd you fall in love with a 17-year-old? Oh, the heart does what it desires, and just some BS that he has the power to use, and people were like, okay, that's fine. So what is this saying? Like how do we love a movie? We love Harvey Weinstein movies, for example, but like, can we watch it anymore knowing that he was part of it? Hard to say, right? I would say we probably should be okay because, again, there's a lot of other people involved. But if it's something that reminds us of his crimes, then maybe we might look at it different, right? Again, if it's irrelevant, then maybe we can watch it. But are we still supporting him? Tricky. So another article another point this article brings up that I think is interesting is you kind of have to be a monster to be a good artist, because the example this writer gives is she goes to this house with a husband, wife, and a kid, and the wife is succeeding at her writing, and the husband isn't. And the husband says, like, you're basically writing at the expense of taking care of our kids. So what it's saying is, to be a great artist, you kind of have to be an art monster where you ignore your responsibilities and stuff. And I'm kind of a monster in a way, because most of the time I'd rather stay home and make art and look at art and read about art than hang out with people. This goes back to Nanette. Myth of the Tortured Artist. Let's see. Okay. So there's not that much to go. So there's these two videos, the Myth of the Tortured Artist, and then the same person responds to that, the Truth of the Tortured Artist. Okay. So this talks about like mental illness and stuff. So the summary of this is, people think of like mad scientists and tortured artists as like these crazy geniuses that are great because they're crazy. When the reality of it is, People are great artists in spite of their craziness. So I personally suffer from depression and anxiety. And when I'm super anxious, when I'm super depressed, I can't make art, you know? There is a correlation between bipolar disorder and artists, but not a whole lot. But um, so why do people assume that artists that artists are like this, like geniuses are kind of crazy people? I think it goes to the false idea of a genius in general. I don't really think there's a thing as a genius necessarily. It's just people are people, and sometimes people are happen to be more adept at what they're doing and are born in the right place at the right time to make like these certain discoveries or whatever. I don't think people are necessarily geniuses, or that might just be me not being a genius and being jealous. No, I'm not jealous. But I think there's also a false idea of romanticizing mental illness, which this video talks about. Like, geniuses are kind of crazy because they're missing one part of their brain, like the common sense part of their brain, and they make up for it in how smart they are at art, And this is kind of a common thing when it comes to doctoral students. They're the most intelligent scientists are just socially awkward as hell. I personally am kind of awkward. I study human communication to make myself less awkward, but I have a master's degree, so I am kind of weird in that sense. You have to be kind of weird to get a master's in art. A little bit delusional, to be quite honest. And I also am kind of an awkward person, but there are people who have good social skills and are great artists, right? So, yeah, it's really weird. So, okay, yeah, I'm running out of time, but essentially, I'm just gonna switch off of this. The reason I'm not reading off the slides is because there's just too much to go over. So we're just gonna look at me, because I'm so pretty. Yeah, so it's important to really consider artists as people with feelings and thoughts and dreams and ambitions, that have flaws or might be super great people or both. And this is I was going to say this is yeah, it doesn't matter what art it is, actually. Any art, honestly, like, you really want to think about the background behind the person if you have the opportunity to. Like, if you do look at my art, you'll have a better understanding of it because I'm your instructor and I'm with you for 10 hours this term. And you know my preferences for art, what I do, what I don't like about art, of what I show. And I know if you look at my art, you'll have a different understanding of people who I just know online, who I talk to maybe once a year, to friends that I made art with in grad school. You'll look at me differently, or you'll look at my art differently because you know me in a different context. Like, I won't be showing my class any artwork that's not safe for work. This is my work, so I mean that in the most literal sense. And I do make stuff that's not safe for work that I was able to show my students in grad school because I was a grad student and that was my primary thing. But now that I'm a teacher, you don't need to see that. It's personal, and I don't show most people that work, just a certain subset of people. So, yeah, and it may surprise you that, like, I am such a happy, like, optimistic, open-minded person. But I also make some artwork that I don't want you to see, for reasons. That's the thing. People have private lives. Sometimes that will affect how you see them. Sometimes that's important. Sometimes that's not important. Sometimes people bring that out into the open. Like Robert Mapplethorpe was a gay photographer who died in the 80s or maybe 90s, who brought a lot of his sexually explicit gay artwork. And that was protested because people are homophobic and closed-minded. And like that, like knowing that about him is important, but he also made like gorgeous photographs of flowers that people also protested because it was because of this gay man who brought this this obscene artwork, right? So I feel like I'm rambling at this point, so I'm gonna show you my mantids. So I'm gonna try to bring out Frances first. Here she is. She's definitely getting bigger. I'm also gonna try an experiment where I'm gonna try to give her honey, because apparently they like honey. I don't know if she'll take it though. No, she's a little bit too nervous. But yeah, she'll now crawl on me. She used to be afraid of me before, but now she'll crawl on me. Isn't she gorgeous? My mom doesn't like her as much as Dr. Baby. It's kind of sad choosing your favorite grandkid. Oh, she just crawled on it. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna end with Frances because I want to enjoy my time with her. I didn't expect she'd crawl on me. So again, thanks for showing up for this extremely rambly lecture, which I'm fine with because sometimes that happens and there's too much to cover. So thank you all. Say goodbye to Frances. And I guess Frances is saying bye to you. All right. Love you. Toodles.